Good morning, everyone. We'll start off with an apology for our late start. As I probably could be expected, as things are going with me, as soon as 10 o'clock hit the fire alarm here at DCJS, and most of us followed protocols to get out safely and across the street, but everybody's good here. I don't know, it was a drill, not a real fire, so we're back online, and thank you everyone for joining us this morning. I'm Matt Charton, Deputy Commissioner at DCGS, Director of the Office of Probation and Correctional Alternatives. Welcome to our spring 2026 New York State Probation Commission meeting. Before we get started, we have the pleasure of having Executive Deputy Commissioner Joe Hopkins join us, and I'll just ask if Joe would like to say anything before we begin.
Sounds good. Everybody, good to see you. It wasn't me who pulled the fire alarm here in Albany, but I'm happy that we are all safe and together. So I just want to say thank you for being here or being here virtually. Before we turn to the agenda, I wanted to share a few updates on two important topics. One is our continued progress against gun violence, and the second one is our investments in the enacted fiscal year 26-27 budget. So the data continue to move in the right direction. Through the first 5 months of the year, up through June, shooting incidents with injury in the GIV communities dropped 18%, shooting victims declined 20%, and the number of individuals killed by a firearm decreased 49% compared to the same time last year. And when we step back to where we were 2021, which was the kind of peak of gun violence across the nation and here in New York, the scale is even more striking. Shooting incidents with injury have fallen by more than 65%. These numbers represent lives protected, families kept whole, and communities that are freer from fear and trauma. They also reflect what the governor has called a whole of government commitment to public safety. I keep track of how often she says public safety is her first priority. She's now said that more than 500 times, and I remind our Division of the Budget colleagues that frequently. More importantly, they reflect what you all do day in and day out. Law enforcement, community-based organizations who are doing the work on the ground. So probation departments, police departments, sheriff's offices, district attorneys, you are the ones who are doing the work. But so are our street outreach workers, violence interrupters, youth engagement programs, and neighborhood organizations working alongside them. That partnership, what we call the co-creation of safety, is the reason these numbers are moving in the right direction. And this commission plays a central role in the work by ensuring that we have professional probation services provided to all New Yorkers throughout the state of New York. On the budget specifically, the fiscal year budget has been signed into law as of the end of May. It went into overtime in a way that I'm happy that the Knicks didn't go into overtime last night. Go Knicks. But it also represents significant continued investment in our shared mission. The governor has now committed more than $3 billion to public safety since she took office, and this budget adds another $900 million to that record. The DCGS budget is now more than $1 billion for the first time in our history. That enacted budget gives us the ability to do all of our violence prevention work, but also to support the work you do. For example, the GIVE and the STRIVE efforts. GIVE is our gun-involved violence elimination, and STRIVE is our statewide targeted reductions in intimate partner violence. The P is silent. We love our acronyms. They provide together more than $72 million to participating agencies for data-driven efforts to tackle gun and domestic violence. Second, the governor in this budget signed a first-in-the-nation law addressing illegal homegrown firearms. So the enacted budget requires DCJS, along with a few other agencies, to work on minimum safety standards for 3D printers, so that they would not print and produce unlicensed illegal firearms and firearm parts. So we'll be working on that and coming back to the commission to provide more updates. The budget also moves a few other priorities. We have a police training accreditation program that we're going to pilot. We also, for the first time in the last 15 years, double funding for state crime labs, which are kind of the backbone behind all the work we do on prosecution. And then we expand to have a new crime analysis center in Westchester, which will now ensure that every region and every county in the state is served by a real-time crime analysis and investigative support center. So before we move to the agenda, I will just express my sincere gratitude to each of you on the commission for your service and expertise, and to the incredible DCGS team led by Matt here, who supports the work every day. The progress we're seeing across the state, historic lows in violent crime, improved public trust, and renewed interest in the public safety profession would not be possible without all of you doing the work. And I would just say, I'm looking forward to being with the Council on Probation Administrators in their conference, which I believe is next week, 2 weeks away, 2 weeks out. We're continuing our statewide tour with the commissioner. I know sometimes that presents conflicts for people, but we really view it as our mission to be out there to listen, learn, and lift up your solutions. And while the budget just got done a few weeks ago, we're already thinking about how we can tell the probation story and drive more dollars toward probation in next year's budget. So with that, I'll end my filibuster and turn it back to Matt.
Thank you, Joe. I know everybody, the commission certainly appreciates you making the time and appreciates the comments that you're providing. Moving down the line, I'm going to take a roll call for commission members, and then I'll ask those who are non-commission members to introduce themselves for the role. So Judge Joseph Zayas. Rocco Posey.
Here.
Anna Bermudez.
Here.
Joseph Wargo. I believe Joe will not be able to attend us. Dr. Jeffrey Butts.
Here, not there.
We appreciate everybody joining us, whether it be remotely or in person. We appreciate everybody taking the time to join the commission's meetings. I believe we do have one, we still have one vacant position, which I think Frank will cover later in the meeting. I know we have some guests on the line, and if we could start with our OCA guests, if they don't mind introducing themselves.
Hi, I'm Carl Flans. I'm Principal Law Clerk to Chief Administrative Judge Zayas.
Thank you, Carl.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rosemary Martinez Borges, and I serve as the Deputy Chief of Staff for Deputy Chief Administrative Judge Edwina Richardson. And today with me is Special Counsel Izzy Durante from our Youth and Emerging Adult Justice Division.
Thank you. And I do want to recognize Judge Zayas' office and the work that his office continues to do with probation throughout the state. Judge Zayas has been very open to having his staff join work groups that we do, and I think it's been really productive work, and we'll hear more about that later in the commission meeting. So I'll ask us, for those that are here in Albany in person, to introduce themselves, starting with John.
My name is John Watson. Good morning, everyone. I'm with the Office of Legal Services for the Division of Criminal Justice Services.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Frank Cantiano. I am the manager of the Adult Probation Operations Unit for the Office of Probation and Correctional Alternatives here at DCJS.
I'm Joe. Good to see you again.
And this next introduction, I'm very happy that that's going to be made. We've been waited a long time. So Tasha.
Good morning. My name is Tasha Brown. I'm the Assistant Director of the Office of Probation and Correctional Alternatives here at DCJS. Thank you.
And my name is Teresa Scano Hansen of our Juvenile Probation Operations team here at OPCA.
And good morning, everybody. My name is Damon Baycoat. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for the Center for Safer Communities here at DCJS.
Thank you. And for our DCJS staff that are on the line, Jen, I'll start with you.
I don't know where my picture just went, but Jennifer Cox, I am the manager in the training unit at DCJS OPCA.
Thank you, Jen. Kimberly?
Good morning, everyone. Kimberly Chavone, and I am the manager of the Fiscal and Administration Unit in OPCA.
Thank you. And Melinda?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Melinda Bick. I'm a Community Corrections Rep 2 here in the Reentry and Workforce Development Unit.
Thank you. And Michelle?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle Clark. I manage the Reentry and Workforce Development Unit at OPCA.
Samantha?
Good morning, everyone. Samantha Herbst, CCR2 in the Alternative to Incarceration Unit.
Thank you. Thank you, Samantha. I know Katie doesn't like me to have her introduce herself, but Katie Cullen is working behind the scenes to make all of this happen. So thank you, Katie. I'm going to ask you at your request to introduce yourself. Lastly, joining us, we are lucky enough to have the Council of Probation Administrators current president, Tim.
Good morning, everyone. Tim Davidian, Orange County Probation Director and current COPA President.
Thank you, Tim. And again, sincere thank you for all of those that are joining us. The commission plays a very important role in the work we do. And so commission members and guests, thank you once again for joining us. I would ask commission members to take a look at the December 11th, 2025 minutes. I'm sure everybody snatched them up as soon as possible and read them multiple times. But if you haven't, you could take a quick look at them now. And in about 60 seconds, I will ask the commission for a motion to approve the minutes of December 11th.
Matt, while the commission members are reviewing the minutes, I just wanted to point to a proposed edit. On page 3, paragraph 5, starting with the update on the work group, supervising young people with guns. Paragraph 5 indicating to help snug workers understand the role of probation. DCJS OPCA also presented at the November 2025 SNUG conference. They discussed how SNUG organizations can partner with probation in a variety of ways. And the edit is, and in July 2025, Juvenile Probation Operations Kelly Thompson and Adult Probation Operations Amy Buchanan presented at the NISPOA conference, along with 3 probation departments, Oneida, Niagara, and Rensselaer, sharing probation practice strategies in supervising highest risk gun and blunt cases.
Right, we will make that correction if the commission approves. So having reviewed the minutes of December 11, 2025, considering Frank's, we have a motion to approve the December 11, 2025 minutes.
Judge, I think you might be muted.
Sorry about that. So I wonder whether or not the folks who are in the room together can zoom in. When I have to appear in that way, like it's really hard to figure out. I don't know if everybody else feels a little unsettled by this, but I can't see who's talking in that big room. And I know the operation I have in my space, you can zoom in to, not exactly zoom into everybody, but is there a way, because we don't know who's talking or who's making a request. I don't know if you can zoom in a little closer to everyone so that we can see who's talking. Please forgive me if that's an intrusive request, but it's a little hard to figure out who's talking in that room because the camera is so far from each of you.
Thank you, Judge, and we will try. See, you're really stretching our technology, skill sets here, but we'll see if we can do that. If not, in the meantime, it's Matt Charton speaking now. We will let the people who are remote let them know who's speaking.
Yeah, no, that's better actually. Actually, that's worked. One of the gentlemen is not in the picture anymore, but that's even more helpful. So the closer that you can get with keeping everybody in, please forgive me for making this request. Maybe it's only me, but it's hard to figure out who's talking sometimes, but were you asking for a second of the motions to approve the minutes?
I was asking for the initial motion.
I already did that, Matt.
Oh, Rocco, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Okay, so
Okay.
motion was made by Rocco Posey. I am now looking for a second. Thank you. And so the minutes with the edits that Frank raised are approved. And now I'm going to turn it over to Frank Cangiano, who's going to kind of go through agenda number 4.
Thank you, Matt. Frank Cangiano from Adult Probation Operations at OPCA. For every single meeting I always like to attach the references to New York State executive law as far as the statutorily required responsibilities of the State Probation Commission. These are referenced in New York State Executive Law 242, 243, and 246. And generally speaking, this executive law really speaks to the Commission's role in providing DCJS with advice and consultation on matters relating to probation practice, on matters relating to the annual probation plan and application that's submitted to our agency on an annual basis, as well as other matters of interest when it comes to probation, the state of probation across New York State. So I just like to request this to commission members offline to review once again the executive laws and their statutorily required responsibilities, just as we move forward in these meetings, as well as when we conduct our offline work with the commission members on our different projects.
Thank you. And it really is important for DCJS and OPCA that the commission really kind of drives these meetings. We are, you are a body that advises OPCA, and that we really want to have kind of a dialogue with commission members about the challenges, the good and the bad, that is the state of probation in New York State. So I appreciate that, Frank. Number 5 on the agenda is the items for discussion. This is an opportunity for commission members to raise any issues that they feel are important, that they would like to open up for discussion within the commission. We do send this out to commission members in advance. I don't think the commission had submitted any items, but this is still the opportunity for the commission to discuss any items that they feel are important. Of course.
So is there executive privilege? I'm going to pick up on what Jeff Dias said in the minutes of December, which was around New York City. And Matt, I wanted to kind of tap you in without warning to talk about New York City probation, some of the changes we're seeing down there, because I think it's both encouraging, but also very, very important for the oversight and delivery of probation services.
Sure. Thank you, Joe. Yes. For those of you who may be unaware, Commissioner Juanita Holmes is no longer the commissioner at New York City DOP. Commissioner Sharon Goodwin, a former deputy commissioner of DOP, is now the commissioner for DOP. How many times can I say DOP? And really happy that Commissioner Goodwin has decided to take that task on. She brought a lot of her leadership team from in the past back in, including First Deputy Robert Eusebio, Counsel Wayne McKenzie, and so it was really a good experience that I had when I went down and met with the leadership team in April. So they have challenges, New York City. They lost an enormous amount of staff, an enormous amount of leadership and institutional knowledge under the previous commissioner. And they are doing their best to rebuild both staffing needs as well as bringing back people who have the knowledge of probation and how it operates in New York City. They are in need of several things, training, being a primary one, and obviously rebuilding the department. Commissioner Goodwin has asked our office to help with that training. We are developing a plan to help with that training. And so it's probation in New York City will look very different than it has over the last couple of years. And we want to take part in helping rebuild the Department of Probation to meet the challenging needs of individuals under supervision in New York City and operating a department in such a large city. It's going to be a challenge, but I know that Commissioner Goodwin knows that DCJS will provide the support that she needs where we can, and that thank you, Joe, for raising this, because I'd like the commission to any commission members to provide any thoughts on that they have in terms of New York City, the change in leadership, challenges that they are faced with today. So open for discussion now.
I could make a comment. At the risk of sounding like I'm in sales, I just want you all to know that John Jay College is currently building out an ambitious training component for non-students. So focusing on the professional community. I'm not directly involved in it, but I'm aware of it. And some of the people I work around are doing it right now. And they're investigating all the advantages of using the infrastructure of the computer systems here for remote learning and all kinds of stuff. So it's a big deal here, and they're hoping to be a prominent player in the non-enrolled, non-student professional training business. So I just want you to know that, and I'd be happy to keep you informed if there's a chance to do so.
Please do. Thank you, Dr. Any other commission member?
So of course I have to weigh in because I am also very enthusiastic and excited about the possibilities with the new team at DOP. Sharon worked under me and is incredible, and she essentially grew up at probation. She started as an intern and is now commissioner, so she has a ton of institutional memory. I think that also the damage that was done on the juvenile side was even bigger than on the adult side. And so I think focusing on that will be important so that there's more confidence from the judges and from the system, stakeholders, on the department. So I share your enthusiasm, Matt.
Thank you, Lana. I will say, yes, with the support of the Commissioner's Office and Executive Deputy Commissioner Joe Pumpkin is looking to bring on a temporary employee at OPCA to help work directly with DOP, somebody who may have a rich knowledge of DOP and the resources that are available. So we are looking forward to getting that in place so we can provide the support to Sharon, the leadership team, and the staff at DOP. So that's something I'm very happy to report out.
Please just call me Joe.
It's on the record.
Yeah.
We in New York, my team is in the process of setting up a meeting with the new probation commissioner. We've been meeting with a lot of the deputy mayors at this point, but the commissioners are next on our list, and they've been very amenable to meeting. We have regular meetings with some of the deputy mayors already. But it's on the list of things that we're trying to do in New York is to meet with the commissioner the new commissioner of probation. So I think I agree with Anna when she says that it's a good sign.
I would just say very similarly from DCJS, we've been doing some meetings with the deputy mayors, and I think very similar, Judge Zayas, trying to offer them whatever support they need. And I think I agree with Anna Bermudez about the juvenile side really took the biggest hit. And so now looking at those gaps and looking at the summer, what are the programs that they want to prioritize and restore? They're just going through their budget process. So I think we'll have a lot more dialogue and discussion, and we'll continue to bring the commission up to speed on where we are and plug whatever gaps we can.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Thank you for raising it, Joe. Appreciate it. We'll move on. Under focal issues for commission feedback, and I'll turn it over to Craig.
Thank you, Matt. So as you can see here, we have 4 items for focal issues for commission feedback. We're very happy to have Damon back up here from the Center for Safer Communities. And Damon is going to now provide the commission and invited guests an overview of the SNUG program that exists within New York State. So bear with me as I quickly just share the PowerPoint on the screen. Everyone see that okay?
And good morning, everybody. And bear with me as I see if the remote works here, which it might not, but that might be more my error than the computers here.
Wait a minute, you give me the thumbs up and I'll move your.
Okay. I'm a little old school. I'm just gonna tap it to see.
Take the batteries out and blow on them.
Yeah, do all of that good stuff. And maybe I should have had some training. But my name is David Bacon. Like I said before, I'm the Deputy Commissioner for the Center for Safer Communities. Matt, if you could, Frank, if you could tap it for me. Frank, we'll work together here. We'll make it happen. We'll do a comeback like the Knicks did last night. So the office the Center for Safer Communities is kind of made up of 2 offices, and one of them is the Office for Community Violence Intervention, which a lot of people around the state know is SNUG, and we'll really talk about like what SNUG is and kind of what the work is and a good overview of it. And I do ask when I'm doing presentations, usually I'm standing up and I'm walking around and I'm moving around, but with the cameras in here, they ask me to stay seated. So if you see me kind of just wiggling in my seat, understand because I'm used to kind of moving around doing presentations. And also the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, which is probably about a year and a half now at DCJS. It was part of the Department of Health, but it's moved over. So really just want to give you a brief overview of the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. And I just want to say, I know Joe said it before, but the governor has done an unprecedented amount of money towards, public safety. And for us, I go way back with SNUG. I've probably been doing SNUG since 2013, 2014. And we were at a $2.5 million budget, and we're at 20.9 million now. And we're probably going to be asking for more money because the program is just grown. So Joe, just be prepared while he asks. Now we can call him Joe when we're asking for money. But really, just there's been this investment into money, and as we can see, the reductions in shootings. We would like to say that we play a huge part in that as well, and partnering with probation and police departments, and we can talk about how that looks. And I do ask, if you have a question, please don't wait to the end, interrupt me, and ask your questions, and we can talk about with that whatever in the discussion. All right, so ready. So part of the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, as you can see, is really to build a statewide, comprehensive, coordinated, and sustainable approach to preventing gun violence. And really, we want to make sure that New York is a healthy and safe place for all communities, free of gun violence and full of equitable opportunities. And really, that health equity, that accountability, anti-racism, and community resilience is a huge part of what they do. And also, we want to make sure that we're trauma informed and we're really focused on healing communities. We look at the next slide here. Yes, and so, part of their priorities are really to coordinate government and community. So we really want to be able to have government hear from community. And I think with Commissioner Rosado and Joe coming to DCJS, they have really made it a priority as an agency is to really hear from the community so we can understand what we're doing. So we're not kind of making these decisions, kind of sitting in this ivory tower. We really want to know how the work is. And then we want to be able to invest in, and then, you know, the office really wants to be able to invest in communities that are most impacted by gun violence. And for a lot of you guys on this call, you guys have worked in some of these communities for quite some time. And then we want to be able to enhance the health system's capacity, because a lot of times, you know, a lot of our victims of gun violence are coming, they're all coming through the health system. And I don't think the health system has really been able to understand like what that looks like, how that looks in the community, and how can we help. And also, you know, with the Medicaid passing of trying to be able to, how can we fund this for hospitals as well? And then we also want to be able to build public awareness, because I think a lot of times people, there's a couple of things that happen because data is not widely shared in community, at the community level. People don't understand really what's going on. When I go out to these communities and I talk about these numbers, I still hear that they're shooting every night or that people still feel unsafe. So we really want to make sure that there's this big public awareness about what's really happening. How do we get the numbers out there? And how do we, you know, how do we let people know all the great things that are happening in communities as far as gun violence? And then we want to be able to strengthen the data infrastructure, because there are so many data points coming from so many different places, whether it's the health system, whether it's DCJS, whether it's the court. We want to be able to figure out like, how can we get that infrastructure? How can we all get kind of this message out in one place that really makes sense for communities to be able to understand what's happening. Next slide. And I won't, can we click on it? Or don't worry about it. No, don't worry about it. We have a video that we can share, and I don't mind sharing that. It's about a 7-minute video of Snug and really some of our participants and some of our workers, and it's really nicely done video. But I don't mind sharing it now. Yep, we go to the next slide here.
Hey, Dave, we'll share that as part of the minutes.
Yes, yes, please. So just kind of really an overview of what Snug is. So we use the public health approach to address gun violence, and we really want to be able to look at like, what is the source of it, right? Like we kind of look at it as like, what is the source? Who's committed it, and then how do we change those community norms while we're doing that, right? Like, so we want to kind of interrupt that cycle of violence, and a lot of times, you know, we would love to be able to catch. It's hard to document what we stop and what we prevent. It's almost impossible to prove that. But we know that we do a lot of that work. But we also are reactionary when there is a shooting that happens. And part of it is our work with the police departments and community members to make sure that that one shooting doesn't turn into 6 shootings like we know that it can. So we really want to make sure that we interrupt the transmission, but also a big part of what we want to do is change how the community sees violence. Sadly to say, a lot of these communities that we work in expect violence to happen. I just left the training in Utica earlier this week, and you know, one of the things people said was getting warm outside, so we know that violence is going to spike, and that shouldn't be the expected normal part of what happens in communities, because there are certain communities around the state, around the country, that they don't expect the summer to come and violence to spike. You know, they think summer, school, kids are out of school, barbecues, and sometimes in some of these communities, we think there's going to be more violence because the summer's here. So we really want to be able to change the norm of what violence is seen as our communities, and also the groups that we're working with, that there has to be a different solution to problems outside of picking up a gun and shooting somebody. And so part of what separates, and I think what we're proud of here at DCJS, is we have a statewide network, and we are the only place in the country that has kind of this overarching state network where we kind of, and there's other slides we'll talk about, we kind of reach all the way from Niagara all the way down to Suffolk County, where we really kind of have all these sites connected, same training. So if probation is working with somebody in Buffalo, or probation is working with somebody in Suffolk County, know that the people have been trained the same, we're collecting the same data, so we're trying to compare apples to apples so people can understand that. And so that oversight is that we have also provide TA to each one of our 14 sites. And so this makes us very, very unique from anywhere in the country. If you go around the country, what you'll see is it'll either the CVI work, which we call community violence intervention work, is done by cities, or maybe counties at the most, but it's never done on a statewide level like we do it. So, you know, that makes us very unique. We can go to the next slide. And so, you know, here's kind of a map where we are. You can see that we're located in mostly the major cities. In New York, we're in 14 cities, 13 counties, as Westchester has 2 snug sites. And I will say that I'm a Westchester resident, and my background is that I started the snug site in Mount Vernon. So I, have kind of done this work from the ground up. And we also, have social workers at each one of our sites as well, not only outreach, but we'll kind of talk about everybody that's there. Yep. Here we go. So, part of our staff are what we've called credible messengers. So, we hire people who are from the community, who have been in the community, and some of them have lived experience. Probably about 70% of our staff has had a felony conviction. But that doesn't make you automatically become a snug worker, right? We want you to be able to have credibility in that community. And when we say credibility, that means that you have the ability to work with young people and reach a population that has been traditionally kind of hard to reach. We talk about maybe that top 2% of that population that's driving a lot of the violence. And we want to be able to reach that. So we've hired not only people who have lived the life, who have gang ties and things like that, but who have demonstrated an ability to change their life. Our part of our hiring practice is that you have to be 18 months from a prison sentence, because we've kind of found out that amount of time means you've kind of been able to establish yourself, establish a track record in the community. But we also have hired football coaches, basketball coaches, youth pastors. We've hired people in the community that also have just been incredible to the young people in the community. So part of, and part of it is, I come from a training background, so we believe in training. We believe our folks in training, and we not only say it by saying go get training, but it's also in our work plans and our contracts. But we also, before you can even start working, you have to go through a 40-hour training. Like I said, I just came from Utica, where we have a new class of about 15 snug workers from around the state, and they're there for all week. And it's a very comprehensive training. The training kind of takes you through the history of snug. Then it talks about what our professional standards are, how do we collect data, what our database looks like. Then we also start talking about, some social working stuff. And we start talking about like human development. How do people develop? Why do people join gangs and things like that? And then we also talk about motivational interviewing. And then we get into how do we do the work, goal setting, and things like that with our participants, and what we consider to be a participant. But we also have done things like trauma systems therapy, which was our kind of modality that we worked through at all of our sites. So we have social workers at each one of these 14 sites, and our social workers are usually from those communities. So there is some buy-in, but we do also offer clinical services for anybody that comes in our office free of charge. But we've done trauma systems therapy, where we looked at like trauma happens to people, and people's behaviors are a lot of times driven by the trauma that has happened to them. And so all of our staff has been trained in that. Our staff, besides the motivational interviewing that they get for half a day in training, we've also contracted with somebody to do intense motivational interviewing with our staff since 2022. And right now our staff has been trained in CBT, cognitive processing therapy. So there's been a lot of training of our staff, and we ask that, that each staff member in the contract, in the work plan, is that they receive 40 hours of training a year. And it has to kind of be approved by my office in DCJS to make sure that it fits into the work. So we want to make sure that our people are highly trained when they're out there doing the work, so they're not causing more harm than good, even though our intention is out there to do good. Yep. And so each site is kind of staffed this way. There's a program manager. That program manager is in charge of the administrative tasks, also the outreach supervisor, and also the program managers in charge would be the liaison to the police department to talk to the police department about data. And we want to make sure that that's our connection usually to the police departments, and usually for most part of their probation departments as well. And so that's kind of our leader in our office. Underneath that person is our outreach worker supervisor, and that person is usually supervising the outreach team. That means they're out in the field with our outreach team. They're working the same hours, and most of our hours are usually Tuesday through Saturday, and they're non-traditional hours because we want to be out there when the violence might happen so that we can hopefully stop it. So we have our outreach worker supervisor, and our sites vary from site to site. We have some sites that have no more than 6 people. And then we have some sites, our larger sites such as Buffalo, that might have 25 people. So it varies. So we might have more than one outreach worker supervisor at a site, depending on how many people we have. And then we have our outreach workers. And those are the people who are engaging with the young people, who are mediating the conflicts and really have, that past life experience and that credibility in those communities to go talk to who they need to talk to. And then we have a hospital responder. We have several at certain sites, but we have one designated person. When somebody goes to a hospital, their job is to respond to that hospital. As you guys know, the hospital can be a gathering place for family and friends, and people kind of talk about what's going to do next. And we hope to diffuse those situations before it goes back out to the community, but also be able to talk to patients as well, because we do know that sometimes when somebody does get shot, unfortunately, that is a time that they don't get reflected on changing their lives. And so we want to make sure that we are there to help them out with some of those decisions. And like we said, we have a social worker. All of our social workers are licensed in every site but one. And so they can provide clinical therapy and at free of charge. We don't ask for insurance for that. We don't have a waiting list. And so we'll be more than happy, but our social workers are also out in the community because we understand the population we work. Sometimes we have to meet people where they are, but we also, not only work with the highest risk, and we'll get to what that looks like with our social workers, but also, if there's a victim of violence, there's a mother, there's a little brother, there's a sister, there's a cousin. We can also work with that person through our social work component, and we also help fill out Office of Victim Services applications for compensation for people who have been victims of violence. And then we have a case manager, which helps our outreach team with helping our participants reach their educational goals and bringing more resources into our office. And so here we go. And this is what people ask, well, how do you know who you're working with, right? Like, how do you know what we say is the highest risk person? What makes them highest risk? And these are guidelines that we give to all of our sites. And so we have about 7 things on here. And our charge is if they meet 4 of those 7s, we deem them highest risk, and those are the kids that we work with. Because if not, we don't have the resources just to take any young person. If the kid is, he's skipping school, or he's fighting in school, yes, we understand like that could lead to something, but we just don't have the resources to work with everybody. So we want to make sure like this is the criteria. So we do usually 14 to 25 years of age, because we know usually those are the ages where people, your brain's not fully developed, you're impulsive, you're making decisions. And so we want to, that's been the age where we've seen a lot of shootings happen. We know that's the leading cause of death for young Black males is usually between those ages. And then you're active in a street organization. We do know that if you're a part of a gang, a crew, a clique, whatever the kids want to call it nowadays, that there's also a chance that there might be violence happening. But once again, just because you're 14 to 25 years of age doesn't mean that you're high risk. You're the highest risk. And just because you're in part of a gang doesn't mean you're automatically, partake in gun violence. And then we want, if you have a history of violence, that's one of those things that we would check off. Engaged in high risk street activities, whether you're at the gambling spot on the weekends, you're selling drugs, you're robbing people, those type of activities we want. So this is the only one that we know, or we have a good idea that you're carrying a weapon, that is an automatic 4 points. So you could be none of these other 6, but if you're known to, if we think you suspect that you're carrying a weapon, you automatically are checked off as highest risk participant. Because if you have a weapon, you either have it for safety or you have it to try to use it, and you can use it even if you have it for safety. So that automatically makes you high risk. And then also recently have had a family member shot within the last 6 months. We do know that people who get shot or have had a friend or family member shot, it can kind of change their trajectory where they're going. So we want to keep an eye on that. And then recently released from prison for certain crimes, we want to make sure that if you left and you had issues going on, that you're not coming back home trying to settle old scores and things. So get to my next slide. And so people always want to know, well, how do you do the work? How do you set goals? So we are very, very strategic in how we're working with our participants and how we're setting goals, because our object isn't to keep a young person with us forever. We don't want that. Because if we're keeping them with us forever and they're always at the highest risk, that we aren't doing our job. We really want to be able to lower their risk, help them get whatever goals that they set, because we have to work together with them to set whatever goal they want, and then be able to move them out the program to make more room for the next. So if you could click the next slide, and this is just kind of, how we do it. So we have a database where we collect data, and part of what we do is we ask every outreach worker that they meet with their participant a minimum of 6 times in person. That doesn't mean FaceTime, that doesn't mean phone call, that means you physically see them 6 times every month. And we are tracking that. And we do send out reminders. Our TA people check the data. We ask the supervisors to check the data to make sure that we are on track to meet those guys 6 times. And to be honest, 6 times a month with a very high risk person probably isn't enough. But what we did was we used to have a caseload of 10 to 15 kids per outreach worker. We lowered that caseload so that those 6 times a month, we aren't chasing data. We want to make sure that we have quality visits and not quantity. So what we really do is like make sure we're spending time. They're taking notes on those meetings. So, we do have a way to track like the work that they're doing. They're doing risk reductions with every one of them. And we want to help them obtain new skills and behavior, right? Like we want to help them. Like if you tell me you want to go back to school, we want to help you get there. We want to also be able to help you understand like what are your triggers? Why have you committed violence in the past? And how can we help, deal with those situations? And then also our workers, because our workers were once our participants, were once where our participants would be, we want them to be able to model behavior. We're really big on professional standards. And I know people have seen some issues that have happened with our guys in the past. Like we're not blind to that, but we do also understand that we really hold a very high professional standards for our people. And so what we want to do is we want our people to model the change that the young people can become. And part of using credible messages is saying, I've been there, I did it, I lived it. But we also let our people understand that they are not responsible for the change, because what can happen is, all you guys know is when you're doing this work, you get so invested in who you're working with, and when they don't meet the criteria or they fail to meet their goals, or they get arrested, or something happens, someone gets shot. Even we've had people, lose participants to gun violence. That's not all on us. We can only do what we can do. And we want to make sure that our people aren't living and dying with this, because the big part of it is we are asking people to go back in communities where they've come from, where they try to change their lives. And that draw can be very tough if we're not careful. So we know that relapse is part of it. And then we want them to understand that, change is hard for people, and ambivalence is normal. Like you guys know this, working in probation and in other places, you'll see a kid that seems like he doesn't care, but that's pretty normal. As we build trust, and this is a partnership. We want to make sure that our guys understand that this is a partnership. We're not telling young people what to do. We are working with them to do what they want to do. Yep. Yeah, so, part of what we do is, a big part of what we do is conflict mediations. So we leverage our ties in the community to hear about what's going on and be able to, because we've hired the right people, we've hired trusted people in those communities, to be able to help them, de-escalate a lot of situations. And that's, and we take them, probably this part of our training is the longest part of our training. We probably spend a whole day on mediating conflicts, the way to do it safely, and the way that makes sure that, we're not putting anybody else in danger. And usually when a shooting happens, we're either notified, because our guys are from those communities, we're either notified by the community, but we also work with law enforcement that they will let us know as well when there's a shooting in the community. And then we kind of go do our work from there. And so anytime that it happens in our area, we usually respond with the shooting response, which is within 72 hours. And the reason we wait 72 hours, we want to make sure that area is safe. And shooting response will look like we will invite the whole community out. And we really want to invite the community out so that people can see that, we are not okay with this happening in our communities. This is how we kind of change the group norms, is we'll go to the spot where the shooting happens, we'll bring a megaphone, and we will really try to gather the community to come say, we are not okay with this happening in our community anymore. And we do that within 72 hours. Like I said, we want to make sure that if we did it, within 24 hours or right away, there could still be some retaliation going on, and we want to make sure that we're not putting anybody risk. And like I said before, we go to the ER because we know that that's where family members are, and that's where sometimes people can start plotting on what to do next. And we want to make sure that we're kind of stopping that before it spills back out to the community. Yep, we can go to the next slide, right? And so our goals, right, is really this community engagement. We want to change behaviors and attitudes. And so what you will also see from us is that we are tasked with doing a community event a month. So you'll see like big barbecues, you'll see basketball games, and we want to bring the community out in a peaceful way. And so this month is Gun Violence Awareness Month, so you'll see a lot of our places doing different things. I was just in Yonkers on Friday at the YMCA. They had a better barbecue than I had in my house. They had hamburgers, hot dogs, ribs, chicken. Like they really had a really nice event going on. They had music playing. They had popcorn for the kids. They had a Peace Mobile where they were playing the video games on there. So we want to bring the community out in a positive way. And this is kind of community engagement, let them know what Snug is doing in community, but also let the community see that we can all gather peacefully without there being violence. And we also want to, target religious leaders, residents, and then also law enforcement. We definitely always have invited law enforcement out to these bigger community events so that people can see that we're all together, we're all part of the community. Because I do hate when people say law enforcement and community. I feel like we're all in the community together, working together, and that's how we should all be seen as community members. But what we do is we do work with our participants individually or as small groups, and we do what we call participant events, and we do once a month. And we've had some really, really great participant events. We've taken participants to the Black History Museum in DC. We've taken them to Florida to see some NASA stuff. We've done some really, really cool stuff with our participants because we do want to make sure that, and I'm a firm believer in that, when people can see something different, then they can dream different. It's hard to dream it if you can't see it. And we want to make sure our participants are able to see different things, that the world is bigger than their couple blocks that they kind of roam around in. Like there's a whole big state, there's a whole big country. So we want to make sure that we are doing, and our guys upstate, I will say, they love coming to New York City. And I'm sure they didn't know the Knicks were going to be this good, or they would have planned a bunch of participant events around the game so that they could have been at the game for that atmosphere there. And we go to the next slide there, Frank. And so here's our relationship for police. So if there's a shooting that happened, so we ask that our program managers meet with their police liaison at least once a month. And this is to develop a relationship. And this relationship, a lot of times this information comes one way because it's hard for our people to have credibility if they're seen as an extension of law enforcement. And so we want to make sure that, it's hard. We can't build cases, we can't get on the stand, but we also know that we can do a lot of work. And I used to say when I was in Mount Vernon and I was working with our police department, I would say that we can get to them before you guys can, then we have done the community a service there. So, we ask, if the police know there's certain things going on and there's involvement, can we go talk to those young people or go talk to the groups that are involved? If a shooting happens, they would notify us within a couple of hours. And then we want to be able to discuss anything that, the police department knows is going on, but they just can't get to. We want to be able to get there. We always look at our relation with the police department as we're on the same highway, going the same way. We're just in two different lanes getting there, and we shouldn't cross over in each other's lanes. And then because a big part of it is our credibility in the community. Because we're out there working just with our reputations, it becomes our people's safety if they think that we're working with law enforcement. So we want to make sure that our people are always seen as credible, and that's why our program manager only really works with the police. But we do work with the crime analysis centers. They send us maps. They also send us data, 3-year data. And part of it is so we can be strategic in our work, because like I said earlier, if you ask some of these communities and we talk about these numbers, they're going to say, well, there's shootings every day. We want to make sure that we're in the places where things are happening. So if we're getting real crime stats or real crime data about where things are happening, then we can plan our day to where we want to be. So we're really thinking about, like, how do we do this work strategically moving forward? And then and we could go to the next one here. And so, in each city, we have worked with probation in a lot of the cities that we're in. I know Matt and myself are starting our probation tour. We started out in Orange County. We're going to Westchester in July. And we really know that a lot of probation departments are working with the same young people that we're working with. And so we would love to really be able to have a system, a referral system, and we have it in some places. I know Erie County does a really good job of working with our snug team and really just like making people, so that we can get some of those kids referred so we can work with them in the ways that we can work with them in a trusted way. But I know the big sticking point has been like, are we reporting back to probation? And our answer is we're not able to report back to you about because we don't want somebody to get violated. And I know it's changed, probation has changed a lot. We know we don't want somebody to get violated because they're not attending snug. But I will say, as our relationship builds and the trust becomes, there are certain things that we are willing to say, you know what, Damon's doing great. And it's snug. He's gone on the trips. He's really been involved in the program. And so really working together and building that trust, I think our relationship can definitely get better. And I think part of it is just really getting to know each other and understanding each other's work. And so I think this is why I'm here, so that, probation can understand what we do, and also doing our tours individually, Matt and I, so that we're making sure that, everybody understands what everybody does. And then we also want to be able to provide wraparound services because we do have case managers and social workers. We are a resource to help, with some of these wraparound services. We do ask that nobody is mandated to us. Our program is voluntary. So when people are mandated, then they're no longer in a voluntary program. So our program is voluntary. So we ask that that you don't mandate anybody to us. And we also work with OCFS in the facilities. We have our people go to facilities and talk to the young people there. And we also want to start, discharge planning with young people at those facilities. So, 6 months they're prepared to come back. We already have this relationship with this young person, so they're coming back, becoming a program participant. Yep, we go to the next one. Here. And once we said, how are we different than other CPI? We're the only statewide network in the country. And our unique relationship with police departments through GIVE, that we've worked very, very closely with over probably the last 10 years, is definitely different than anywhere that I've seen in the country. And once again, our training program, we don't have any outside trainers come in. We developed it here at DCJS. It's DCJS people and certified trainers that deliver our training to our people for that first 40 hours. So that is very different as well, because even those places have CPI, they usually have people coming in from the outside doing their initial training. But we're doing the training, so we are a resource. So when somebody has an issue, they can call the people who trained them, and we can not only be there by phone, but we can also be there in person. And we also have two of our guys that go around the state once a month to visit each site to make sure that training is translating into what's actually happening on the ground. And in our social work team, we have 4 social work supervisors that go weekly to the different sites to provide clinical supervision to all of our social workers. So we are very, very, very involved in our sites all the time. And then we have, a database that DCJS owns, where the data goes into, and we work with, making sure that we are data compliant, because making sure that our sites are meeting the standards for data. Yep. And so, we can go through the next slide here. Yep. So just a little bit about our social worker case management program here. So we understand the incredible messengers and how big they play in this program, but we also understand that there's some skill sets that they don't have. And so probably in 2019, when we lost one of our workers and we realized that we weren't supporting our team. And how can we support our team? So we worked with Office of Victim Services and were able to find some funding for a few years to provide social workers at each site. And so this is kind of our social work outreach team, how we work together. And as you can see, the biggest part is the participant in the middle. And so social workers, have the ability to navigate social service, trauma-informed, the treatment practices and resources and tools that our guys just might not have. Because sometimes our guys will show up on the scene and everything rushes back from their life, their lived experience. And so as much as you want to hug that mother or that brother or that father, that might not be the appropriate thing to do. So having somebody who understands what that looks like and how that looks and how it should look to be able to be on that seat with you is super helpful. So we, with our social work, and also when our team gets trauma, like because our guys are so connected to the community, a lot of times the victims are somebody they know. It might be a cousin, it might be an uncle, it could be a brother. So how do we debrief as a team? And so having somebody on site that has some of those clinical skills is huge. Yep, we can go to the next one. Right, so once again, we're providing therapeutic service to participants, victims, and their families. A lot of times, our outreach workers are only working with participants, which is a small number of people, but they are connected. Nobody lives in a community in a vacuum. So our social workers are able to participate with their families and really work on, this healing and resilience. And then they also need therapeutic groups for participants and also staff members. So, we're doing healing circles and all types of things like that because we really want people to understand that we're here to heal so that we can move past, because we say that heal people, just like hurt people, but heal people, heal people. So we want to make sure that our team is healed, but also our wider community is healed. And then, once again, we're going to respond quickly to any incident that happens. And then mental health support, safety planning, emergency services. And we have helped families relocate. If it's a situation where there's a family member that has gotten a house shot up, they don't feel safe in that community, we have helped people relocate. And because we are networked across the state, we have helped people locate from one city to another. And relocating to another city can be scary, but it's also great to know that there's a support system in place that you're halfway familiar with in another city. So we're just not saying, well, if you live in Buffalo, go to Poughkeepsie and figure it out. We'll say, you know what, we have a site in Poughkeepsie, here's our social worker's number, we'll call, here's a family, and we'll make sure they have the proper resources and things that they need. And then we want to make sure that we can effectively, the social workers help make sure that we can effectively support our high-risk individuals impacted by community violence. Yep, that's great. Right. And our case managers, they're out there helping to bring resources back. So when people say, I want to get a job, and that sounds great if that's your goal, but if we don't have the resource to find an employer or somebody to help you get a job, then we're not helping. And we want to make sure that we have some concrete resources there, educational plans and with the school system and things like that. And then also helping our SNUG outreach workers, because a lot of them don't have the educational expertise or have never really worked in the field to understand what case management is, what case notes look like, and things like that. So we want to make sure that they have the ability to do that, and we're learning and we're teaching. We always talk about, like, for our outreach workers, we only want them on the job 3 to 5 years because this work can burn them out, and we would like them to be able to move on to other and bigger and better things and make ways for other people coming that might need this opportunity as well. And yep, here we go. And so, here's kind of our goals of the social work program. We want to support the SNUG participants by utilizing like the outreach workers' credibility, because we do know that we live in communities, Black and Brown communities, where social work isn't trusted. I say that as a social worker, but we do understand that mental health is one of those things. It's one of those taboo topics, even though it's been a lot more lately. It's been a little more open lately, but we want to make sure that we're using our outreach workers' credibility to say, listen, the social worker's cool. Believe in me. You've trusted me this far. You can come meet with this person. This person's okay. And then we want to make sure our social workers are out in the community. So when we're doing these community events, we want to bring our social work team, and we want them to be able to talk about the services that they can provide to the community. And then we want to make sure that we're working with individuals affected by community violence. And so that's just not the participant, but that's the participants' friends, families, and the community as a whole. We always use this as an example. When a shooting happens, somebody gets shot or somebody's murdered in our community, what happens is people go out to the spot where they were, and they put all these bottles and candlelights, and there's this vigil. But what they don't realize is there are people, a lot of times young people, who come by that every day to go to school. That's a reminder that somebody was killed on that corner. What does that do to you? What kind of thinking does that do to you every day? So, we want to make sure that we're working with these communities to understand that gun violence just doesn't impact individuals that are involved. it impacts the whole community. And how can we help that whole community? And our social work program has really allowed us to be able to service more people throughout the community than just a small number of participants. And like I said, we help out with ODS applications. We've helped out with ODS applications since 2020. And really part of it was because there was a population that was victims, but people didn't see them as victims. So they never even applied for OBS applications. And so we've really been able to open that door to help them apply, because making people understand that you're a victim too. Just because you lived a certain life, or or if somebody dies, your mother wasn't involved in the street life, so she's still a victim. She still has to bury you. So we want to make sure that we're able to support, through victims compensation as well. And next one. And then we want to be able to provide support and training. We ask our social workers with a lot of the trauma training. We meet with them monthly and do a different type of trauma modality, trauma training with them. And we ask them to carry that back to our sites to work with our outreach workers, to train our outreach workers in the different modalities and things like that. And then we want to be able to make sure that we are building a direct connection, because we also fund 6 now level 1 trauma hospitals, ECMC, Rochester General, Albany Med, Westchester Medical, Jacoby, and I'll miss one here as I'm going down the state. And so we fund them with a social worker at each of these sites. At Rochester General, we have a psychiatrist, and we have a few social workers there. And so what we want to make sure that we're doing is that we're funding these hospitals with social workers that are snug and hospital responders, but we also want to make sure that we're making a connection between the site and the hospital, so somebody doesn't come in the hospital, spend their days in the hospital, and goes back out in the community. We want them connected with each of the sites that the hospitals are connected with, the level 1 trauma centers. And we can do the next one. And here we go. Here's our hospitals here. Mid-Hudson Regional Hospital Poughkeepsie is what I was missing there. And so we want to make sure that we're breaking barriers between the hospital and community-based services. And we understand the hospital work is that golden hour. Like I said, when that person comes in and they've been shot, that is really a time when they're thinking about changing their life. And if we can get to them and talk to them about changing their life and not coming back to the hospital for this, it really makes a difference. And really being able to talk to family and friends that are gathered there has been huge. And I always use myself as an example. I had a younger cousin in Yonkers. I live in Westchester. We shot in the neck at 12 years old. Probably about 6 years ago now. And all Yonkers victims go to Jacoby Hospital. And I can remember going to Jacoby Hospital and working with Stand Up to Violence at Jacoby. And I can remember working with the team at Jacoby Hospital, talking to the doctor, letting us know like what his prognosis would be and things like that, and really being able to talk to his mother at the time. His father was still in jail, who was my wife's first cousin, and we were able to call the father and say, listen, he's in the hospital, he's intubated, he's probably gonna be paralyzed, but being able to talk to the family to make sure that, retaliation didn't happen. We're talking about a 12-year-old kid who had a lot of dreams, and, now he's 18, he's graduated from high school, he's in college, he does a lot of positive stuff, but he spent a lot of time with our people in Jacoby, and just to see how it worked, not as, in theory, but actually in real life, was all it had to do was sell me on what the importance of hospital programs with gun violence. And next one here. And so, this is kind of, what we are. We're empowering individuals, we're strengthening communities. And, at the center of all of this is our participant. And if we can make our participant feel like, because a lot of our participants have had doors shut on them, been kicked out of most of the programs that are in their city. I always laugh, like, they don't want them in the YMCA. They don't want them in this community center. They don't want them in this program. They can't play on the football team or basketball team. Well, what do you expect them to do? And so we want to be able to wrap our arms around them and show that, you know what, we care about you. You're a big part of this community. You can make a difference in this community. And here's all the different resources that we're going to wrap around you. But we're asking something from you. We're asking you to change your life. So we're asking you to be a positive, productive member of this community. So really, that's at the center of all the work that we do, is really empowering individuals, which strengthens a larger community. And that is it. And and I felt like I've talked to the screen for a long time. So if you guys have any questions or comments, I'm here.
Great. So thank you for that presentation. That was great. And, you know, I'm sure you're familiar with ROCA in, you know, from Massachusetts, and CASES has also a similar program, which I don't call programs actually, because they're really interventions. Programs are places young people have to go to and whatever. And this is really about really meeting them where they're at, literally and figuratively, right? So so I appreciate all the work that you're doing. And also there's a new report that came out called HR2, which is hard to read, high risk, hard to reach youth, that essentially validates all your work. So I would definitely use it as part of your sort of like documentation of why your work is so important and it works. And really to me, in what I've seen both at probation and other work that I've done, this is the approach we need to use for young people where all the probation officers are saying, well, nothing works with him, nothing did. That's the approach. That's what that young person needs. And the last thing I'm going to say is that it's really great that you have the criteria that the young person has to meet for at least 4 of the criteria, because that allows for not net widening and not to, you know, because what you offer is so great that everybody is going to want all the kids to go to you, right? But that's not the point that you should, that's not the point, right? And I really appreciate the fact that you have that criteria, because it really reserves the spots for the young people who need it the most.
Thank you. And as you speak of ROCA, we are actually going to start working with ROCA hopefully by the end of this year. They do a CBT.
They're doing the rewire CBT with you guys? Yeah.
So we're going to kind of take on that modality over the next few years working with ROCA.
Great. Yeah, I was a trainer of rewire at one point also. So
okay.
Yeah.
Other commission members or guests, questions, comments for Damon?
I heard you, I saw it on the screen that, I'm sorry, some folks are working in my office here. I saw on the screen that the social worker part of it, you had somebody in New York City at one of our hospitals, Jacoby Hospital. Is this, is any other part of the, I don't know if that was just the social worker, you know, at the hospital. Sounds like more for the victims, which obviously is a good thing as well, and the victim's family, and perhaps the accused as well. But the main part of the program, you might have said this. I did hear you say New York City. Did you say you're not in New York City yet?
So we are at Jacoby Hospital. Jacoby Hospital is actually is our flagship hospital, violence intervention program, which we call HBIP. And so Jacoby has probably close to 40 staff. And so they kind of are a hybrid model where they have social workers, a part-time pediatric physician is part-time on the grant, and also they have the outreach team. And the outreach team covers kind of the North Bronx, White Plains Road area, Pelham area, and then also the Bronx River, Stratford, and also the Soundview section of the Bronx. So our outreach team is in those communities, but they're all based in the hospital, along with 2 social workers, pediatric surgeon, and our program. We have 2 different program managers and an overall program person there as well. So that has been one of the places that's been up since 2014, but that is the only place that we're involved in New York City. And what we're hoping is to start a relationship in New York City so that we can really say that we're in everywhere in New York State. Even though we're in the Bronx, we would like to be in the other 4 boroughs as well.
I'll make one comment. You used the word data several times, so it's your fault that I want to make this comment. It's really important when we track the effectiveness of this approach or any approach to deal with violence, especially gun violence, that we have good measures and flexible measures to detect an effect. And it's, of course, law enforcement data is indispensable in tracking this, but I'll always encourage people to think about the other very important data source, which is hospital data. Sparks, done by the Department of Health, Sparks with a C. We've done evaluations and programs like this and found different conclusions when you track where did the shooting happen, which is what law enforcement data gives you, versus where did the person live who was just shot. And you learn different things. And if you're tracking over time, it's important to do both of those to pick up on a good effect. So just leaving that there as a recommendation from a researcher.
Yeah, no, thank you. And we're big on data. As you know, DCJS loves their data. So we are definitely looking at other ways to track. And also in data, right, like it can give you some hard numbers, but there's also some things that we're trying to figure out, like how do you track, right? Like how that one participant changing their life, or that a couple in that group changing their lives, how does that have an effect on the quality of the rest of the community, right? Like how do you measure that by this person getting a job and working and becoming a taxpaying citizen? How does that have a larger effect on the social effect on the community as well?
Any other commission member or guest? I will say Damon's chair moved like from where he's sitting now all the way over to the wall and then back. So we recognize the challenges that have been identified earlier, sitting down and doing a presentation. So, thank you, Damon. On behalf of the commission, thank you for taking the time to come and give us the overview and important for your very important program. So thank you very much. And as David said, I'll just highlight it one more time. David and I are identifying some snug sites where we can bring the probation, the field probation officer and the leadership in that probation department. If you sit down with the outreach workers in the snug program and Damon's group together to see where we can either build, rebuild, or strengthen the relationships between snug and probation. It's, we kicked it off in Orange, as Damon said. We hope to hit most of the snug sites because probation is working with several of the same people that Damon's people are working with. So it's an important relationship to have and to continue to build on.
Yeah, Matt, can I add something else too? So one of the things, in New York City probation years ago, and Sharon was one of the big orchestrators of the policies around this, but our data basically kept showing over and over again that especially young people, right, the emerging adults, came in with convictions of robbery, assaults, and weapons, quite frequently, like 50% or more of the young people on probation in that age group were on probation for robbery, assault, or weapon. Okay. So we created these special protocols for what we call the raw cases. And one of them was, definitely connecting them to interventions like snug. And that would be a way of whittling that, like a very easy, in a way, quote unquote, way of targeting any pilot or initiative, because those tended to be also the young people who were the frequent flyers, in terms of system involvement. So anyway, that was just a thought.
Thank you, Anna. Yes, thank you, Dave. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
So moving on, under number 6, we distributed article, reasonable to reversible, we call it review of probation conditions. And the reason we raised this is there have been times that probation departments provide kind of a blanket menu of conditions for individuals under supervision. And on violation proceedings or things like that, judges are looking at the conditions and really questioning why those conditions were applied to the individual in the first place. It raised some concern in our office, but really after kind of taking a really good look at this and a good look at the way we train new officers coming through our fundamentals of probation practice. We really, in our training, we focus on, conditions being tailored to that individual, either being, identified through the offense that individual committed or through things that have been uncovered during the predispositional or pre-sentence investigation process, and only recommending conditions that address those kind of criminogenic needs or risks. So that's, we just wanted to put this on the radar of the commission, noting that there is an article out there that has questioned whether probation was really providing conditions that address criminogenic needs, and I do think that if in general we are doing that and recommending those conditions to the courts for probation supervision. This concerns me because I think probation has come such a long way in changing its approach to individuals on supervision, that it's not just probation is not just waiting for somebody to violate a condition, whether that's an appropriate condition or not, and get them back in front of the judge. Probation has changed its practice to really focus on clients' needs, individuals' risk, and focusing our resources on those things. And so this kind of hit us a little hard to say, oh, this is really a step back for us in trying to change the narrative of probation. But I think in our review of what's happening in practice today, we were happy to see that both our training and most of the practice throughout the state really does follow recommending conditions that have to do with individuals' criminogenic risk factors. So I'll open it up. I know if people have an opportunity to read it, want to comment, any commission member.
So yes, I have a lot of thoughts about this actually, and I read the report. It's something I didn't get to do when I was at probation, but if you look at the probation conditions for New York City, it is astounding that somebody hasn't taken us to court on these, honestly. And it makes sense that they be targeted to the issues, right? So if your crime was not committed at night, again, for the young people, there was one example in the document about curfew, then, what's the point of curfew? Plus curfew has its own issues altogether in terms of efficacy, but we won't get into that. But when I looked into the issue and as to why the conditions of probation in New York were the way they were, at first I was told that, well, because they're required by statute. And I was like, what? So looked at the statute and what New York City did, and this goes eons, like ages ago. It's just nobody's tackled this, because it's too much of something, like either too hard or too cumbersome and whatnot. And we still we do our practice the way we do it, kind of in spite of the conditions. So statutorily, there's a bunch of there's a few conditions that say shall, and then there are a bunch of conditions that says the judge could or can. And what New York City probation did was took that whole laundry list that is really long, including must not associate with disreputable people, or go to whatever places, lascivious, I don't know what, like that you could barely go anywhere in New York City. And so and then put them on the conditions as part of the conditions. And so it is a worthwhile endeavor to really think through how we can arrive at a happy medium of giving, you know, a fair amount of professional judgment and control to probation, because probation officers, as they get to know the people who are on probation, can, you know, assess what, you know, matching it to the risk and needs assessment instrument, what is really needed versus a blanket, you know, cannot use drugs when there's no drug use reported, you know, kind of it's whatever. And then it subjects to someone to drug tests that are unnecessary, right? So I mean, I think it's something that the commission might want to take on at some point in terms of a recommendation. I don't know what our function would be around this, but I think there's some statutory work that needs to be done to be able to, you know, sort of, I don't want to say fix this, because it's kind of, well, fix in the sense that there's a disconnect between what even the statute say and how probation works now or something. I don't know. I'd be interested in looking into that, certainly.
Thank you. We will take you up on it. Again.
Hi, everyone. This is Frank Cangiano from OPCA. Joe Wargo, who's a commission member, could not be here today. But he did provide some written responses to the article. I just wanted to talk about it, so it's on the record here. What Joe said after doing a quick review of the article was that things that struck him is that every case that comes through has a validated risk assessment. Compass R for the adults, LSIR for the adults, Yahtzee for juveniles. Both these assessments determine risk and criminogenic needs. Joe's thoughts are that special conditions of probation should address the criminogenic needs identified in the assessment. For example, drug and alcohol use, treatment, mental health needs, so on and so forth. Regarding community service, Joe also indicated that they use community service hours for juveniles too. However, many places do not like to take on the youth for community service work, citing some liability concerns. That condition is ordered for youth on probation. And what Joe's saying here is that, with that being said, we should not impose conditions which may not be possible for the person to do or to comply with. So there's something else that he wrote down as some of his thoughts. He agrees with the concern about charging court fines and surcharges to individuals who can't afford to pay them. He does feel like having a search condition is helpful for the probation officer to be able to verify items that should not be in the house. He feels also there's a level of accountability there. And really overall, what Joe wants to point out for the meeting here is that he still holds that the validated risk assessment should be the guiding force behind the majority, if not all, special conditions of probation that are ordered or recommended by probation to help inform those recommendations. So I just wanted to make sure that you all heard some of the thoughts that were indicated by Joe Wargo.
Thanks, Rick. Any other thoughts? So I just want to give an update. About a year ago, we developed a probation directors problem solving group. It's a group of 7 probation officers throughout the state. Tried to mix it up pretty well between some larger, smaller departments, geographic representation. We've met 3 times. It's gone well. Probation. The idea behind it was I really wanted to use the probation officers or directors to give me kind of a on the ground look at what's happening on probation, and for them to bring any concerns that they have to DCJS, where we could maybe leverage, resources or help in terms of helping them address trends that they see throughout our state. As I said, we've met 3 times. Going to meet for the 4th time in the fall. Some of the issues that have been identified is, not surprisingly, detention beds for the need out there, juvenile detention beds, 25 and out, 207C. Really, what I've tried to task the group with is really beginning to focus on probation practice. What's out there in terms of probation practice and the challenges that they see across the state and probation practice in terms of working with individuals, making an impact on their lives, public safety, victim safety. Those are really the things that I want the group to be looking at. And again, what are the challenges they see, and how can we use state resources at DCJS to help them address those challenges? So we will continue. It's in its infancy. I want to thank those probation directors that have volunteered to be on that group. It's been a good experience, and we will continue to work, and I will continue to keep the commission updated on the work of the probation directors problem solving. With that, I will turn it over. Any questions on probation director's problem solving? Hearing none, I will turn it over to Frank to go over.
Yes, thank you, Matt. We have some work group updates. So as you can see here on the agenda, we have 4 current work groups that are going on, collaborating with DCJS and commission members or delegates. So I'm just going to ask Teresa Senior Hansen to provide an update on the 2 work groups that she is leading, supervising young people with guns as well as youth detention. Teresa.
So as we've discussed in the last few commission meetings, we have a lot of activity around a variety of discussions in the family court system. So the first work group that I'll talk about is focused on supervising young people with guns. Really, this was born out of some of the discussions here in the commission, but also by practitioners about some of the challenges that probation departments face in supervising within their communities the highest risk youth for gun-involved offenses. So we convened a work group just over a year ago with an objective to share strategies across our youth justice stakeholders and probation fields that promote safely maintaining youth in our communities and elevate the most effective practices for doing so. Our focus for this work group has been both family court involved young people as well as the criminal side in youth part. So we have 3 primary areas of focus within the work group, which have been around 1, expanding collaborations across stakeholders, the second around sharing guidance and best practice strategies, and the third, providing and making available relevant training to improve practices. And a number of people on our work group are in today's meeting, including both sides of our OPCA, adult probation operations and juvenile probation operations teams. Several people now from Damon Shop at the Center for Safer Communities representing the SNUG perspective, but also we've gained a lot of momentum this year working with the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, by the way, Damon. So Caliana and Jessica came 1 month to do a presentation about the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, and they've come every time since. So we're really grateful, actually, because that has shifted the conversation a little bit. We've been able to talk not only about community violence intervention and the approaches from that community violence intervention perspective, but also ensure that we're talking about intervening with the individuals who engage in violence, right? So that's, in most of the time, that's where probation fits into that metric, right? And working specifically with the individuals, and in fact, probation measurement is about the impact that's made with those individuals. So we've got a couple offices from the Center of Safer Communities. Of course, we've talked in the past about Anna being on that. Rachel from Rocco's shop down in Westchester as a probation administrator, Orange Probation Administration, and Onondaga Probation Administration. But also Rosemary, so our friends over at the Office of Court Administration, Rosemary, who's on the commission meeting today from the Office of Justice Initiatives in the, did I get it right, Juvenile Justice and Child Welfare Initiatives? Did I say that right, Rosemary, your team?
Our division is the Youth and Emerging Adult Justice Division.
Sorry.
It's okay.
For everybody straight. So we've had really interesting conversations. We continue to meet, bringing in specific conversations about programs or other opportunities that exist across the state, talking through research that has been emerging or that's relevant to discussion, and specific strategies or challenges in service provision. So this group will continue to meet. It's been exciting to have a lot of new opportunities present themselves because of the relationships that have been developed through this work group, and we're going to keep going. So we've got some renewed objectives for the year around continuing to make connections with state level programming and local level programming and how to fund things across jurisdictions, etc. So I'll just ask Anna and Rosemary, anything you want to add to that? Did I cover it in a nutshell?
Yes, you did.
You did.
All right.
Thank you.
And I just like, you know, as Teresa pointed out, in this work group, it's looking at those two things. It's looking at the community as a whole and how we can address gun violence in the community, but not forgetting about the individuals that have sometimes not been forgotten, but the focus has maybe been shifted away from them a little bit more, where it's, you know, you have to really deal with both. You have to deal at the individual level with, you know, with this area, and then but then the larger community level. And this is a perfect marriage of an example of that, where, you know, where we're really addressing both of those needs.
Okay, I'll move us on to the second work group that's been a topic of discussion with the commission for quite some time also, and that's with regard to detention. So as the commission's aware, we had convened a work group on the topic of youth detention specific to family court. And we concluded that work group last month, but we did meet for a bit more than 1 year together. That work group represented individuals from probation departments. It represented individuals from local departments of social services. It included detention administrators or detention operators, as well as the Office of Children and Family Services related to detention, and our team. And OCA is part of that too, by the way. That grew as well, so bear with me because both of those groups expanded almost every month. So I had to keep a running tally of who's in. But it was really important, and Judge Zayas, I want to just thank you and the Office of Court Administration, because the addition of not only Mickey Hendricks talking about the work that was done in the New York City youth part side of detention system and the processing, case processing that they looked at to expedite the system in New York City, was a helpful dialogue for the detention work group, as well as Rosemary and Izzy's contributions, and Laureen Bermudez from the family court side of OCA joined in those discussions. But we were able to build a lot of connectivity among state level stakeholders and to point to some solutions that can be employed at the local level. And I know we've talked a lot in the commission about kind of outside of New York City, in the rest of the state, the role of probation as it relates to juvenile detention functioning is complex. So outside of New York City, probation departments can have a role in detention that includes not only custody responsibilities, but locating detention bed responsibilities, transportation responsibilities, administering or operating the detention facility. And then it can also include billing inside of the JDAF system that OCFS maintains. So there were a lot of variables, and that work group for that year plus had representation from all of those roles outside of New York City where probation has responsibility. So they were important discussions. I know when we last met in December, we were able to highlight that the Office of Children and Family Services was meeting in person that same day with the Council of Probation Administrators. And we believe there were some good connections built there, with some relationships established and maintained since December. But we were able to draw that group to a close, and I will highlight just a couple of the things that we've left for transitioning into other projects. As some may know, I'll do a little bit of a diversion for a minute, Matt, as it relates to other projects.
Floor is yours.
Okay, be careful what you say. But many of our state level partners in the youth justice system are involved in a project with CSG called Collaborating for Youth and Public Safety Initiative. And we've shifted some of the remaining identified priorities from the detention work group for us to continue to discuss inside of that CSG convening or potentially other convenings. And I'll share some of those with you. While we originally intended, and the objective of that work group was to identify and disseminate strategies across youth justice stakeholder groups that promote access to detention beds for those that pose the highest risk of public safety for juvenile delinquents, that includes the failure to appear or reoffending. We tackled for more than a year talking about alternatives to detention and what those models look like across the state. We tackled discussions about case processing to reduce detention care days and free up those very coveted detention beds when we're able to do. And we continue discussions with OCFS about detention bed capacity. So in thinking about the CSG, Collaborating for Youth and Public Safety Initiatives, we think there are places to shift the conversation that remains around those alternative detention models into the CSG work groups. In kind of two different perspectives. One is around what is fundable across New York State, in New York City and outside of New York City through OCFS STSJP dollars. What's funded now? What could be considered for funding across the state in certain jurisdictions in the future? We also think we can shift conversations around those ATD models and funding by DCJS and OCFS, who are the primary funding streams for alternatives to detention programmings across jurisdictions, thinking about how we can compile inventories of what program models for alternatives to detention exist in which jurisdictions. We don't have comprehensive inventories right now. I think OCFS is a little closer to compiling that than we at DCJS are, but that is something that is an opportunity for discussion inside of the CSG group. Another area where there are opportunities to shift discussions are with our continually evolving relationships with the Office of Court Administration and probation departments, as well as OCFS, but really thinking about the role of the judiciary in convening local stakeholders on detention topics. We continue to believe when judges invite people to the table, they show up. So thinking about ways that we can lift the judiciary in each locality to convene the local stakeholders for conversations about what is our detention process? Who's responsible for, custody, transportation, identification of beds, administering facilities, et cetera. But also, what are the alternatives to detention that exist in our jurisdictions? And what does the judiciary want to see, to be comfortable releasing young people out of detention or away from detention and monitoring through an alternative detention program in the community? So that's something that we'll continue to talk about, how to support judges to have those conversations locally and messaging for that.
And Teresa, I'm going to even ask you to give a little bit of an explanation to the commission about your work with Judge Rivera.
Yeah, it's on my list of add-ons. I'll talk more about another work group with family court at OCA. The other thing that is on our mind with regard to alternatives to detention is data. So not just data sets that exist, but literacy around that. We know that OCFS has data on what alternatives to detention are funded through STSJP dollars. But that is a place where I think we can have additional conversations. And another possible place for discussion was on interest of justice hearings for those older youth that have interest of justice hearings when SSD beds are not available and they're held in one of the handful of certified jail settings for that. We talked too about capacity. So I said, our areas of focus were on alternatives to detention and case processing, but we certainly talked about detention bed capacity. During the meeting of our work group, Monroe, just at the end, they snuck in right at the end, Monroe opened up their new juvenile detention facility, increasing from 31 beds to 58 beds. But we know there are other capital construction projects in the long-term goal. We didn't want to lose sight. It was important, particularly from the perspective of probation practitioners outside of New York City, that we not lose sight about the math, the capacity conversation for detention facilities. So the final words I'll say about the detention work group is, I think for probation practitioners, it's important for probation practitioners to remember where there are clogs in the detention processes outside of New York City, that probation be intentional about reaching out to OCFS, developing relationships with OCFS before it's an emergency. Right? To be sure that if, as probation practitioners, you have a role assigned for some of that detention process, that you're leading a discussion in the jurisdiction that's planful, so that you're planning in advance, the process or the protocols for who's doing what when a detention remand may occur, that you're engaging in conversations with OCFS because they do have some tips and tricks to share with practitioners about, making contact with detention facilities, establishing relationships, paying attention to court calendars, kind of projecting when a detention remand may occur. And in those jurisdictions where probation does not play a role in detention bed processes, thinking about it when there's a violation of probation filed in the court, working with your local stakeholders, if you'll be asking the court to order a remand, kind of giving a heads up to local DSS that you'll be asking for a remand so that they can do a little bit of pre-planning so that it's not a Friday evening at 4:30 remand and no one can find a detention bed. So just for probation practitioners to be thinking about how they can support local processes and the conversations to plan for, in some jurisdictions, rare situations where a detention remand occurs.
So before you continue, I just want to make sure that we're mindful of the commission's time. So I would like to end at 12:30. That gives us 2 hours. So for those of you who are left on the agenda, please be mindful.
Okay, I'm going to raise up 2 last things just for the commission's awareness. Some of the relationship building and the collaboration that's been happening across our state level stakeholders and local stakeholders is that it's kind of had our work branch into other areas. I'm not sure what the impetus was of this, if it was just expanded relationships or if Judge Zayas was strong arming people at the Office of Court Administration. But we were able to, a few weeks ago, think of and bring together a family court work group. So at the request of the Honorable Richard Rivera, our statewide coordinating judge for family court matters, we began convening probation leaders and family court judges just last week for a series of at least quarterly convenings to talk about what works with our highest risk young people in the family court system. So we are excited. That has 10 probation leaders that have agreed to join that group. And in fact, noteworthy, I know we were talking about New York City. Shamira Gambrell, our Associate Commissioner of Juvenile Operations down at the New York City Department of Probation, is a member of that probation and family court JD working group. So we're looking forward to the continuation of that, as well as moving into a new relationship with Deborah Shard-Warshman at the New York State Judicial Task Force on Mental Health. She's a statewide behavioral health administrator, and we're working with her to present some probation topics at the Practicing Law Institute in September. That will be myself and Antoinette Dukes from our juvenile team on the topic of mental health issues and New York State courts, talking about competency, behavioral health, and juvenile delinquency. So in that, we expect to be able to present a bit on the role of probation in the juvenile system with behavioral health screening and connection to care. And that concludes my topics.
Thank you, Teresa. Any questions?
No questions. Just want to make sure everybody knows I am not strong arming anyone. But this is the type of collaboration I think that we always envision with our partners in government, and I'm glad to see it happening. And that folks from my team are making themselves available, including Judge Rivera and others. And to the extent anyone thinks we should do more, I'm open to hearing other ideas that you think we can play. Other roles that you think we can play.
Thank you, Judge. Okay, and we're going to move on to pretrial.
Nicole Aldi, the manager of the ATI unit, could not be here today, so I'm just going to give a brief overview of the pretrial work group that is currently meeting. She provided me information that they're a little over halfway through their original topics for discussion document that kicked off this particular work group. This work group is also working on completing the discussion points on this document, tackling the other topics as they arise from a pretrial standpoint across the state, and ultimately discussing what the deliverables of this work group will be. I'm just going to ask Anna, Rosemary, or Izzy, are you part of this particular work group for pretrial?
So I was briefly, but then we brought in additional members from our town and village courts.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that work group is still meeting and is still ongoing. And we also are having and just started an emerging adult court work group. So Anna, Rosemary, Izzy, Jennifer Cox is on the line. Myself, Michelle Clark, Tasha Brown has now joined this particular work group, our assistant director. Have all been discussing topics related to emerging adults, both individuals, those youth ages 16 to 24. And really what kicked off this particular work group forming was once again a topic that came up for discussion here in one of the previous Probation Commission meetings. Because we recognize that the needs of this particular population are extremely different than than what we're seeing in the general criminal court population. And I think what we're trying to do as far as our deliverables is to, one, develop a presentation to help inform probation departments, ATI programs who work with this age group regarding the brain science, brain development that's impacting this group, as well as trying to increase the skill set of probation and ATI programs on how to work with this particular population. So the work group is meeting to gather some resources, gather some information, so we can do a presentation on brain science. And thank you, Anna Bermudez, for taking that on. I appreciate the work that you're doing there to help us. The other track that we've been talking about is just providing information on the presence of emerging adult courts that exist across New York State. So Rosemary and Izzy have been really, really great at providing information about the existence of these courts, and potentially we may ask judges who are overseeing these courts to be part of that presentation to provide that information statewide, both on elements of an effective emerging adult court model, as well as what's really and how it's really working currently across New York State. I just wanted to give Anna, Rosemary, Izzy, or Jen any time to provide any feedback on their thoughts too.
If I may, I'll just weigh in on the side of the court's participation. We're very excited to work with this group to provide more information about our emerging adults throughout the state. There's a huge interest throughout the state for expanding our emerging adult tracks or courts. And we are very excited about the training opportunities to have them be interdisciplinary. And so I will turn over to Anna because I know we've been working on, Anna in particular has been working on putting together a presentation that should be coming soon, right, Anna?
Yes. So, I mean, I don't have a lot more to add since you were quite thorough, both of you, in terms of really thinking through the adolescent and young adult, brain development and its implications for probation, basically, and for the courts in terms of how to work through a lot of the challenges that they bring to our work, and so we're putting together just a menu of options and contributing to the various work groups on that.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add that we're being intentional in the order in which we roll these things out, right? Because brain science is really foundational, right? So we feel like that piece needs to come first before we dive into the examples and the models that are existing out there. And the brain science is going to be applicable across the board to probation, whether they're involved with a specialized court or not. That's just a huge piece of the populations that we're working with. So it's been a good group, and I think we're going to have some good outcomes from this group.
Thank you.
Any questions on the work groups that we've presented today?
We currently still have a vacant probation commission position. This is a position as a person, as a member of the community who has demonstrated interest and involvement in the field of probation to hold office as part of the probation commission. So we still have that one vacancy that exists within the commission itself. Next up, we have POA and COPA updates for the commission. So I see that Dan Connor, president of the New York State Probation Officer Association, is here. Thank you, Dan, for joining. Do you have any updates for us?
I don't have a lot on the POA side here. Basically, just remind everyone that July 29th through 31st this summer is going to be our yearly conference. We're going to do our awards luncheon on Thursday the 30th, right during the lunchtime hour there. We did make a decision to move our conference, at least for next year and probably moving forward, into May. It opens up a lot more options for us for locations. And our first conference with the new time in May will be next year in Clayton. So we'll have some dates coming up with that. But it really opens up a lot more of the state for us. The big news on our end is waiting to see what happens with 207C. The news came through that it's made it to the governor's desk, so now we just got to hope and pray on that. Really, topics that came up during our last meeting, we have thrown around the idea of what we're looking at as a profession when it comes to physical standards due to the new defensive tactics requirements that are in the BCPO. We've seen some issues and concerns come through with officers' ability to be able to make it through that part of the academy, which kind of almost by definition starts throwing in a physical standard for any new hirees. And we brought up the idea of what departments have those already, because a couple have rolled that around, and just kind of waiting to see where that comes through. But that's a nice part about having people all over the state. We can kind of get some ideas from how it's being handled all over. And that's really all I had.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
And for a COPA update, we have Tim Davidian, President. Any updates for us, Tim?
Good morning, everyone. I might actually be shorter than Dan is. We're in full planning mode for our annual conference, which will be the 22nd to the 24th up in Clayton. It's always good for the directors to get together and bounce some more ideas off of each other. Dealing with a lot of the same issues Dan brought up, waiting to see what the governor's position is going to be on the 207C bill, having local level discussions as to, financial impact on the counties and whether the counties would actually enact 207C. So some concerns and again, discussions about that. Continue to work on retention issues, working closely with NISAC to hopefully get a good resolution on 25 and out of their fall conference. Dan brought up, the physical standards, Rocco's on a call, obviously, but my understanding right now is it's Westchester and Monroe that have the physical fitness standard in up front. Concern for us as well here in Orange County, we've actually reorganized BCPO so that we front-loaded firearms and DT into the front of BCPO. This way, we're not having someone in like week 7 or week 8 of the academy, and all of a sudden now they can't pass the practical exam on DT. But definitely some concerns, and we've had 2 officers injured during DT in the academies, and luckily they were able to recover from their injuries and then ultimately complete the course. And I think that's what I've got. Matt, commission members, Joe, looking forward to seeing you up in Clayton and spend some quality time professionally and personally with both of you. Take care.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Any other business that people would like to bring up?
Okay, hearing none, we will bring our 2026 spring New York State Probation Commission meeting to an end. I will end as I started in thanking the commission members and thanking the commission guests for the time spent today, and more importantly for the work that you continue to do every day in helping build probation across the state. Thank you very much. Enjoy the summer. We'll reconnect in the fall.